Longest Day, Longest Night by Rainbow Double Dash. Chapter 5, Breakdown. As a consequence of having a mad alicorn trapped inside of it, every pony in Equestria feared the sun to some degree or lesser extent. Even the most obstinate and impious still sought shelter during the midday. Still, few ponies outright hated the sun. Trixie hated the sun, at least right now, but not as much as it seemed to hate her. The blue unicorn groaned loudly as she turned away from her window and buried her face in her pillow, welcoming the sweet embrace of darkness that allowed her to escape from the wretched rays of the tyrant sun. She didn't remember climbing into bed. She didn't, come to think of it, remember much last night at all after the contents of the first bottle of bourbon had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, forcing her to find a second one. Or maybe a third. Whatever. Trixie let out a contented sigh as she snuggled closer to her pillow. Or tried to. Her hoof was caught in something. Opening an eye. Sunlight! Looking down, she saw that whoever had laid into her bed last night, as she was sorely doubted she had been conscious enough to do so herself, had neglected to remove her cape first. It was now tangled about her front, trapping one foreleg against her chest awkwardly. Groaning, Trixie forced herself to sit up on her bed and used a combination of magic, her hooves, and a substantial number of impolite words to escape her cape and sling it from her shoulders onto the floor. Instantly upon leaving her person, however, its warming enchantment also slipped off her body, as she suddenly realized that her bedroom was freezing. With a gasp and a few additional curses, she quickly got back underneath her bed's covers. Unfortunately, the enchantment worked by making her retain all her body heat, meaning that none had been lost onto her bed. All she had succeeded doing was to surround herself in ice-cold sheets. I hate my life! Trixie proclaimed loudly, which turned out to be a poor idea. The sound reverberated through her skull, attempting to shake her horn from her head for the feel of things. She groaned one more time as she climbed from her bed and threw on her cape and tried to lie back down. It was no use, however. She was awake now, whether she wanted to or not. Hate! Trixie repeated, though she had the good sense to be quieter this time as she stumbled from the bed and resolved to brave attempting the stairs. After all, the worst thing that could happen to her would be falling and breaking her neck, and then she wouldn't have to deal with the sunlight or the pounding in her head anymore. Trixie found the house empty, but surprisingly clean, given what little she remembered of the party. There wasn't an unsoiled glass, mug, cup, or other such retainer to be found in the whole place, but they had, at least, all been organized into neat piles in the kitchen near the sink. The pantry was stocked with only the basics: bread, hay, and a few condiments, but despite Trixie's habits, she felt that nothing more complicated than toast and butter was probably called for right now. Trixie's stomach rolled in protest at the thought of dairy. On second thought, maybe it would be better to skip the butter. Trixie had just started to feel like a unicorn again. She had gotten a fire going, eaten a few slices of plain toast, and was able to look out a window without going blind, when a series of explosions occurred at her front door. Or somebody knocked. Either way, Trixie supposed she should probably go and either inspect the damage, or else cause some her own. Stumbling to the still intact door revealed that the latter was most likely going to be the case. Sliding her hat on for extra defensive against the sunlight, she opened her door, and found herself staring at an earth pony with an orange mane and 3 carrots for a mark, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a winter coat. Trixie blinked a few times as she stared. Carrot top? She asked, then winced at her own voice reverberating to her skull again. Today on Lunaverse, we learned that sometimes it's not a good idea to binge drink. And that is your moral for today. The earth pony nodded. May I come in? She asked, her soft voice doing considerably less damage to Trixie's skull. Trixie stared at him a moment before nodding. Yeah, just what time is it? Trixie leaned outside even as Carrot Top entered, trying to check the sun's position. She didn't even come close to accomplishing her goal before her pain of looking toward the tyrant sun forced her to retreat back inside and close the door, rubbing her eyes. Nearly midday, actually, Carrot Top admitted, as he appraised Trixie. You're alright. What happened? I don't know, Trixie explained, as she used magic to take Carrot Top's hat and cloak, and hung them and her own hat near the door. You'll have to find some Ponyville who was at the party and ask them. Carrot Top grinned widely and nodded knowingly at that. What brings you here? Carrot Top bit her lip. Business, she explained. I had an appointment arranged with Duke Blueblood, but then he retired, and it's sort of an emergency, so I was hoping I could speak with you. Trixie blinked a few times at that, before rubbing her head. Okay. I probably have an office around here, somewhere. Has he been somewhat less hungover? Trixie might have been embarrassed as she didn't fully know yet the layout to her own home. Still, it took only a minimal amount of searching to find a room and what that would be serving as her office while she lived in Ponyville. Since it was the closest one to the door, the office was small and only sparsely decorated. She had to change that provided she survived the morning. With a desk and comfortable-looking pillows on either side for sitting at, a bookcase with various dry tomes to it. Probably the Ponyville legal code set against one wall and one large old-style map of Ponyville set on another. There are also windows, but mercifully the curtains to them were closed over, so the only light came from gas lamps that Trixie turned on as they entered. Okay, Trixie said as she got behind her desk and settled down, intending to give the somewhat dramatic keep flair as she did, but due to a combination of being hung up and, well, no. Actually, that was it. All she succeeded in doing was dumping the contents of her cape's inner pocket onto the floor. Ugh! Trixie said, summoning up magic and lifting the 3 spilled envelopes onto her desk. Sorry, not at my best. This is sort of my first real hangover. Carrot Top offered another knowing smile. I remember mine, she said, though afterwards she paused to consider her words. Actually, that's not true. It wouldn't be a real hangover if I remembered anything other than wanting to be just struck dead by Luna. Trixie let out a slight snort. Yes, that's been arranged for me. She groaned, before closing her eyes and forcing her mind to focus, regardless of how much she wanted to die right now. When she opened them again, she found herself looking back at her desk. Okay, she said, as she used her magic to open the first midnight blue envelope and slide out the paper inside. What did you want to see me about? Well, Carrot Top said, visiting slightly as she spoke, it's a difficult thing to ask. It's just that this past year's harvest season wasn't as good as I hoped to be. Carrot sales weren't as large, and then the weather schedule called for an early winter for I don't know what reason. Trixie nodded sympathetically as her eyes glanced over from the letter from Luna. Despite being officially from her mentor, the letter was extremely formal. Nothing more than an outline of Luna's intention to appoint Trixie to the position of representative of Night Court, and outlining the duties and responsibilities that Trixie would be expected to uphold and carry out. Nothing that Trixie didn't know already, in other words. The formality and distance stung at Trixie. She hadn't even received a good luck. She folded the letter back up and looked at Carrot Top as she started opening the brown envelope. So, what is your request? Carrot Top shifted uncomfortably. I'd like to request a tax extension from Her Majesty, she said. Trixie considered Carrot Top's request. You're petitioning her directly. Shouldn't you be taking this up with the Equestrian Revenue Service? Trixie's question trailed off as Carrot Top looked away, dejected. The blue unicorn bit her lip. You already have? Carrot Top didn't look up. Declined, she said. Since I run the farm practically by myself till harvest season, I already received some tax breaks. But I just don't think I'm going to be able to pay on time this year, not without some leave. Trixie nodded as she glanced at the contents of the second envelope. As she expected, the letter hadn't been sent from Luna at all, but rather one of her many secretaries. It was directions as to how to acquire her royal stipend for the month, as well as a list of tasks in Trixie's backlog as representative, which was, surprisingly, very little. Duke Blueblood must have been an industrious pony to have left her so little work. Trixie offered Carrot Top a smile as he opened the last letter. Luckily, we ran into each other yesterday, she noted. Carrot Top looked mortified. I'm not asking for a payback for lunch or anything, she exclaimed quickly. Trixie let out a friendly laugh as she turned her attention to the final dispatch. It was a series of paper, each looking older than the last. I didn't think you were. I'm just saying it was lucky. I'm Luna's personal student, and Trixie's voice trailed off as her eyes glided over the paper in front of her. She looked to the next page, then the one after that, eyes whining, and Luna can go and join her sister in the sun! Carrot Top's eyes widened and stumbled backward at Trixie's outburst, which went so far past the obscene that the concept of obscenity itself seemed polite and well-mannered by comparison. The unicorn was staring at her desk, and the letter had dropped there, breathing heavily with contained anger. Representative? Carrot Top asked after a moment, slowly making her way forward. Yes, folks, Trixie is so mad that she just caused a small thunderstorm here in the studio. A big one too. But we will be continuing this reading, even as I turn Lappy's power off. Representative? Carrot Top asked after a moment, slowly making her way forward. Is everything... She was interrupted at Trixie's horn glowing, and at the newest sheet of paper Trixie had held on to, levitated, and held up in front of Carrot Top's eyes. To Representative Trixie Lulamoon, I am given to understand that you shall be my successor to the position of Ponyville representative of the Night Court of Luna to Ponyville. Congratulations on managing to displease Her Majesty enough to make her want to banish you from the Night Court, but not enough to make her want to appoint you as ambassador to the Griffin Kingdoms. Well done. Now the hard part is about to begin. Are you sitting down? Good. Well, that's it. Is there a clock nearby? If so, then take a good long hard look, for you will soon come to know it as well as you watch the glacial movements of its hands, counting down the seconds until you can escape, by retirement or death. That prison is your thoroughly meaningless appointment in this nowhere town, this wasteland of Equestria. Well, that's it. I have observed that there is a good stock of liquor in the cabinet. There is no region in Equestria where you shouldn't spend the better part of your days in a drunken stupor. Just make sure to clean yourself up for formal occasions. Also, you are the deciding member at any tie vote in Ponyville's town council. Don't worry, it almost never happens, and if they do, they'll call you. Do not think of me, vindictive Lulamoon. I received a very similar letter from the pony whom I replaced in this position, and she received one of her own, and so on. I have enclosed a sampling of them with this dispatch, but in the safe behind the bookcase you'll find dozens more, dating back to the very foundation of Ponyville itself. The town has always been used as a site of exile for those who have fallen out of Luna's favor, but were not so unfortunate to elicit her hate. Yours sincerely, Duke Blueblood, retired. P.S. One more thing. So the Callias strike Ponyville, you can technically override any decision the town council makes. Princess Luna looks poorly on such abuses, however. Doing so haphazardly is a sure way to get an appointment to that ambassadorship I mentioned. So, the tedium becomes too much to bear. Carrot Top blinked a few times as she read the letter, before Trixie pulled it away. She swallowed a few times as she looked over the other letters. Each one followed much the same pattern. A depressing legacy of ponies who had realized the mediocrity of their position and, out of sense of solidarity, had seen fit to warn their successors. The Duke wasn't lying, Carrot Top observed. Baron, Trixie corrected absent-mindedly, though from the look of her face, she was doing almost subconsciously. Duke is his name. Baron was his title before he retired. Oh, I never knew that. Trixie blinked a few times. Exile, she said softly. I've been exiled. I was exiled. I knew Luna was furious with me, but I didn't think that. Carrot Top bit her lip as she regarded the unicorn. I'm sorry, she said, stepping forward. But Ponyville isn't so bad. We're at the site of the longest night festival this year. Trixie glanced up at that, eyes wide. No! She exclaimed, taking several rapid steps towards Carrot Top. The Earth Pony backed away, but Trixie kept advancing. Don't you get it? I've been punished! And Luna hated me enough to send me here! Here, where everything was heading into the sun already. She's an alicorn. She must have known about the ever-free storm. Somehow knew that Fluttershy couldn't perform. She knows the Apple Trust runs the festival, knew that the food would be nothing but apples, and that she knows she's a picky eater. Always said it was a one vice. Which means that she knew the catering was going wrong too, and then I didn't even know what was going on with the decorations. But there must be something awful! Carrot Top had been backed against the wall by the desperate-looking unicorn. Representative, she began, and I've been exiled here! Trixie exclaimed, backing away for Carrot Top and turning around. She's still mad with me about the argument about the Argument, the Ice Palace, and still decided to punish me by sending me here and making me suffer for a little bit before trapping me in this position for the rest of my life! Carrot Top blinked rapidly. This seems like a bad time, Carrot Top ventured, as she began making her way towards the door. I'll come back later. Trixie turned in place at that, eyes darting back and forth over Carrot Top. The map of Ponyville set into the wall, and her desk, where Blueblood's and his predecessor's letters lay. After several moments, her eyes narrowed. No. Trixie's voice commanded, her voice dropping several octaves from the high-pitched panic it had been at. No. Steve, I'm going to need your help. Carrot Top grimaced. Help! Trixie snickered a little. Oh, I know what you're thinking, she said. I've fallen out of Luna's fever. I can't help you with your tax problems anymore. Carrot Top shook her head. No, she said. Well, I mean, it's not on my mind, but really, I think you need to be alone. No, Trixie repeated, stepping forward. No, I need your help. I need to know how fast you could put together a thinning stall of carrots for tomorrow. Carrot Top blinked a few times. What? She asked. Carrots, tomorrow. How fast? Well, if I work through the night, but I heard you weren't able to convince the apples to let me set up a stall at the festival. Trixie grinned. A plan was forming in her mind as she trotted up next to Carrot Top. Forget the Apple Trust, she said in a voice that was probably intended to be more warm and inviting, but came across to Carrot Top as having a cold center to it. She guided Carrot Top back over to her desk. You need money, right? Why pass up the opportunity of the longest night? I don't have any paperwork filled out for... Trixie chuckled slightly, tapping the side of her nose with her hoof. I think you'll find, she said, that the paperwork is strictly for food that is intended to be sold on the grounds of the festival. But if you were to, say, use my front lawn, which just so happens to border the town center, where the festival will be happening. Carrot Top stared. That would make the Apple Trust mad. Forget the apples! Trixie repeated, although louder this time. Why should they get all the benefits of the longest night and leave you out in the cold? Trixie leaned close to Carrot Top. It's their fault, you know. That gigantic apple farm of theirs probably step up all the good workers during harvest season, too, and they don't struggle. You know why they don't struggle no matter what Applejack claims? Carrot Top opened her mouth to object, but then shut as he considered. Well, you've got to take a stand! Trixie exclaimed, a manic gleam in her eyes. Show her that you're not going to lie down and take a skirt she's trying to stick you with. It's her fault that you're stuck here. Her fault you needed to ask for a tax extended. Carrot Top blinked as Trixie trotted around to the other side of her. This way, Trixie observed. You won't need a tax break. You'll be able to make enough bits during the festival to stay on your own 4 hooves. You won't need any pony's help. The Earth Pony blinked a few times, thinking deeply about what Trixie was saying. I don't want to antagonize the apples, though. Trixie blinked a few times, then shrugged. Fine, she proclaimed. Let them trot all over you. But you can forget the tax exception. Trixie walked around to the other side of her desk, but didn't break eye contact with Carrot Top. Even if I could convince Luna to entertain your request, which, under this, I doubt I could. She magically waved Blue Blood's lair in the air. I'm not sure I'd be willing to do so for a pony who will just let other ponies have their way with her. Carrot Top blinked. Wait! You won't even send in my petition? She demanded. Why should I? Trixie asked. Her Majesty needs to know that a tax extension wouldn't be wasted on you. But, however, if you do what I said, then I'll send in the request. But by then, you won't even need it. You'll have the money you need to pay your taxes from the sales on the longest night. Carrot Top stared, wide-eyed at Trixie, who had a grin that wouldn't leave her face. The Earth Pony began to object. But the... Carrot Top continued sputtering for a few moments, before her expression changed from shock and betrayal to one of anger. Fine! She shouted, a surprisingly volume given how quiet her voice was. Fine. I don't know what you think you're doing, but congratulations. You're blackmail what? Trixie beamed. Good! She said. Now go! You've got a lot to do and only a day to do it! Carrot Top glared at Trixie for only a moment more, before turning around and stomping out of Trixie's office. Unicorn let her go, and in fact ceased to even look at her as she folded up the letter from Blue Blood and tucked it back into her cape's pocket, then quickly reviewed how to acquire her royal stipend. She was about to spend just about all of it. Trixie entered the town's hall auditorium to the sounds of ponies arguing. No means no! Means no! Miss Kennedy! Trixie's voice objected as Trixie approached the stage upon which Princess Luna would be making her initial appearance. Standing upon it right now was the cream-white unicorn and the magenta earth pony, the two of them glaring daggers at each other. Trixie took a moment to take in the craftsmanship, and found it exactly in keeping with the drawing that Rarity had shown Trixie the previous day. Neither of the other ponies noticed Trixie as he approached. Miss Rarity, she said, the students worked hard on their projects. You said that before. I was promised a spot in the festival right here. Charlie pointed to a point on the wall that would be first seen by any pony coming in from backstage. By the mayor, but she gave me final say on all decorations. Your own sister has a piece. Yes, and it's very lovely. Rarity said with a flick of her mane. Truly it is, but to even think the princess was to come up on stage and have the first thing she sees be crayon and macaroni and construction paper thrown together by schoolfuls. Oh, Miss Lulamoon. Trixie winced at the sound of her second mane as her fellow unicorn at last noticed her. She saw Rarity's eyes twitch slightly as he took in Trixie's appearance. I'm so glad you arrived. I was just finishing with Miss Charlie here. Trixie nodded cheerily, who returned it, though the grimace didn't leave her face. "What brings you here?" "Oh, didn't you know? Miss Lunamoon here is the representative of the Luna's Night Court to Ponyville," Rarity said as Trixie opened her mouth to respond. She closed and grimaced. "Strike two," Trixie thought, counting the use of Lulamoon as a strike one to having made her clear previous day she hated the name to Rarity. "I know that," Cheerily pointed out. "And she is the official Longest Night Festival Overseer," Rarity said, looking over Trixie again. "And darling, I'm so glad you're here. I realized I was perhaps a little sensitive yesterday about your—" Rarity swayed a hoof over Trixie's body, indicating her hat and cape. "Ensemble?" Trixie blinked. She hadn't been expecting an apology. That's alright," she admitted. "Now, I'm kind of... So I stayed up all night working on this?" Rarity exclaimed, horn glowing as she gasped at something that had been carefully hidden behind the stage curtains, withdrawing something long, frilled, and looking distinctly like a dress. It was probably beautiful. It had taken Rarity all night. But Trixie didn't wear dresses, not even to the Grand Gallery Gala. "Much more fitting, don't you think?" Rarity asked. "You could keep the clowns to be with darling, but I simply insist on seeing you in this tomorrow night." Strike three. Trixie saw, here, an excellent opportunity to get back at Rarity and Luna both. She looked at the dress and put on a false smile. "I love it," she lied. "Though I came here to inspect the decorations, like I said." "Oh, of course," Rarity said, settling back onto her haunches. "Inspect away, darling, but I'm sure you will find there's a problem." Rarity sputtered slightly at that. "But problem?" Rarity demanded. Trixie nodded solemnly. "It's a good thing I was here, too, to overhear what Miss Cheerily wanted. See, Princess Luna, she adores children. She's always regretted not having foals of her own, but between running Equestria, racing the sun, lowering the moon, seeing foreign envoys, there's just never been enough time. Not to mention she's most active during the night, when the foals are asleep, so she rarely gets to see any. But she loves them. In fact," Trixie grinned, "she has an entire room of royal apartments dedicated to pictures and letters that foals have sent her." Rarity blinked rapidly at Trixie's words. "Well, I see," the unicorn said, "but I don't understand what that has to—" "Being able to see crayon and macaroni and construction paper made by foals?" Trixie asked. "That would make her night." Most of what Trixie had said was a lie. Luna did love foals, that much was true, but everything else he said had been more or less a complete fabrication. Still, Rarity didn't need to, and never would, know that. The white unicorn's eyes were wide. "So," Trixie said, smiling, "as festival overseer, I have final say over the decorations, and I say that there's going to be a spot set aside for Luna to admire the art projects of foals." "But—" "End of discussion," Trixie interrupted, as she turned and trotted off, leaving Rarity in her dress behind. She thought she heard an overly dramatic cry of frustration, and couldn't stop herself from letting out a contented sigh at the sound. Chapter 6. Movements and Machinations. "Trixie," Cheerily asked as she caught up with Unicorn outside the town hall. The blue unicorn ignored her as she focused on her target, a dark blue earth pony mare wearing a brown hooded winter coat. Though its hood was down at the moment, Trixie was holding up a small bag with magic, and with more magic was levitating 10 silver bits into it. "Lyra Heartstrings," she said. "She's staying with her parents at 12 Hayseed Lane. Find her, and get her to come to the representative's residency at 6 o'clock. The mayor blinked blankly at Trixie. "Do I look like a messenger to you?" she demanded. In response, Trixie's magic placed the bag on top of the Earth Pony's head. "Every pony looks like a message runner when I'm paying them another 20 bits if they do what I ask." The mare's eyes widened a little. She flicked her head, and the bag fell from it, though she caught it in her mouth. "Fool!" she said as best as she could with a mouthful of cloth and money as he trotted off, joining a couple of stallion friends. Charlie blinked as he came up alongside Trixie, staring at the unicorn. "You could have just asked me," she remarked. "No, you're going to be busy," Trixie remarked as he began cantering away from the town hall toward the Equestrian Royal Bank. "You've got that little stand of art projects to set up. You're welcome, by the way." Charlie's eyes narrowed. "You know, I wanted that spot. I really did. But I didn't want to leave Rarity in an emotional wreck just to get it." "Please," Trixie snorted defensively. "She'll be fine." "That's not the point," Charlie objected. "You don't know how much of a perfectionist Rarity is." "And interestingly enough," Trixie said, stopping and glaring at Charlie, looking at the Earth Pony for the first time since he had come outside. "I don't care either. Now, if you excuse me, I have work to do." Charlie's met Trixie's glare. "If it's anything like what just happened in there," she said, pointing back to the town hall, "then the festival is going to be ruined!" Trixie's lips curled into a sadistic smile. "Fine by me," she hissed as she turned away and began walking again. Charlie stared at her for a few moments before shaking her head and trotting off towards Bonbon's confectionatorium. Lyra may have been theoretically living with her parents, but Trixie obviously didn't know the mint-green unicorn very well, and she honestly thought she would be staying with them for a significant portion of any given day. Trixie entered the post office and found it considerably in a better state than it had been when she and Lyra had entered yesterday, with no mess of fallen shells and turned-over carts confronting her. Instead, upon entering, Trixie found herself staring into the wide, yellow eyes of a unicorn filly sitting behind the counter, where the receptionist was supposed to be. Good lord, this is going to hurt my vocal cords. Here we go. The young unicorn exclaimed as Trixie entered, eyes closing and offering a bright grin. Trixie froze as she stared at the filly. She looked like nothing so much as a miniature, wingless, horned version of Ditsy-Doo. The little filly was even wearing a male pony's cap, though it was too large for her head. Despite her ebon-hued mood, Trixie couldn't help but feel her heart swell slightly at the sight, mostly because her brain was failing, at the moment, to fully process what she was seeing. "How can I help you?" the filly asked. Her hat almost slid off her head, but the filly stopped it with one hoof and thrust it back into place. Trixie blinked. She menaced, before her brain settled into a comfortable autopilot. "I need to express deliver this letter." Her horn glowed as she telekinetically withdrew an envelope from her cape and holding it aloft. "Same-day delivery as Ponyville. To Cloudsdale." The filly frowned a little, closing her eyes tightly. Small sparks began to spring from her horn, and a faint lavender aurora wrapped itself around Trixie's letter. Trixie relinquished her grip on it, and the envelope haughtily made its way to the filly, so she nearly lost her grip a few times. At length, it settled down in front of her, and the filly opened her eyes again, panting heavily as she looked at the packets. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay, to Cloudsdale? Same day? That's, The filly's nose scrunched slightly as she looked over at a chart in front of her, tapped out a rhythm with her hooves to aid with the basic arithmetic. 20 bits. 22. A voice whispered from under the counter. 22 bits. The filly corrected herself. Trixie managed the last few moments before coming right up to the counter and peering over it. Sure enough, sitting on her stomach on the other side was a gray-coated Pegasus, hat missing, but otherwise in uniform and keeping one eye on the filly, while the other had previously wandered toward the ceiling, but was now looking at Trixie. "Hi!" Ditsy-Doo returned, said. "Hi!" Trixie returned. After several moments of silence, she stepped back from the counter and looked at the filly again. 22? She asked. The filly nodded, and Trixie removed the bits from her money bag. Like any good sales pony, the filly began counting them out, as Trixie once more looked over the counter. Little sister? She asked the mare, hiding there. Dissy Doo shook her head. Dicky Doo's my daughter, she explained. I'm my mother's muffin! Dicky Doo exclaimed happily, as she closed her eyes again, using her necessary telekinesis to move the bits into a cast drawer behind the desk. It was slow going, giving Trixie plenty of time to take in the little filly and compare her apparent age to that of the mare who was her mother. The Pegasus didn't look like she was much older than Trixie, and for Dinky to be as old as she looked, Dissy Doo would have had to given birth to the filly when she was younger than Trixie was now. It did, at least, explain the maternal authority she had brought to bear against her and Rainbow Dash the other day. Why is she here? Asked Trixie. No school today. So? She's helping me out. First she helped me with my morning rounds, Dissy Doo explained. That was fun, Dinky Doo interrupted, but a lot of walking. And now she's helping around the office. Mailman for a day. Yay! Dinky exclaimed as she finished putting away the silver bits and began using her telekinesis to lift Trixie's letter once more. Unfortunately, she tried too hard, and the envelope began crumbling up. The unicorn exclaimed, loud to a roar immediately dropping from the letter. It fell to the desk as Ditsy Doo stood, and Dinky Doo stared in horror. I'm sorry. I thought I had it, but then I grabbed it too hard as I was only starting to do telekinetics a few weeks ago. Sometimes it's really hard, but sometimes I grab things harder than I need to. This is just like the cup I broke, but I didn't mean to. Trixie held up a hoof, even as Dinky Doo began placing a reassuring one on her daughter's back. Trixie's horn glowed, and the letter instantly began to smooth itself out. The creases remained, but the letter was flat once more. There we go. Good as new. Dinky sniffed a little, but nodded and smiled, at least until her mother started eyeing her. Cup? Dissy Doo asked. No joke, folks. Dinky takes a lot out of you. Dinky sniffed a little, but nodded and smiled, at least until she noticed her mother eyeing her. Dinky offered a guilty laugh, rubbing her head behind her head with a hoof. She exclaimed. We'll talk about it later. Dissy Doo promised as she looked over Trixie's letter to Cloudsdale, her eyes wide in the letter. A weather hire for service? A weather for hire service? She asked. Trixie decided not to wonder how the Pegasus knew where the letter was going, for nothing more than a cloud address. Yes, Trixie confirmed. That Everfree storm is getting worse from the looks of things, and the Weather Patrol told me yesterday they're going to be a complete loss without their captain. So, weather for hire. A dozen Pegasi out to equal one Rainbow Dash, right? Dissy Doo made a face at that. Raindrops isn't going to like that. Why not? Trixie asked. She is the one who was complaining about the storm and not having a Rainbow Dash. Besides, it's not her decision, it's Cloud Kicker's. Dissy Doo stuck her tongue out at that. Cloud Kicker just goes along with anything Rainbow Dash tells her to do. Raindrops is the pony who actually keeps the Weather Patrol together during bad times. She completely, honestly loves her job, and she hates weather for hire services. This wasn't precisely news for Trixie. Even from her brief interaction with Raindrops, she felt she had a pretty good bead on the pony's personality. In point of fact, to an extent, she was counting on it. Well, she's just going to have to pony up and deal with it, Trixie retorted, drawing a glare from Ditsy. Trixie didn't relent. Princess Luna is coming tomorrow. Those guys have to be clear for the festival. And if the Rainbow Dash isn't going to lead her team like she should, then the pony who is supposed to lead the team isn't going to be of any use. Then as festival overseer, it's my job to get out and help make things run smoothly. I think it's a bit more likely that Raindrops will start a fight with the Weather for Hire ponies. Trixie managed to conceal both her grin and a response of, I hope so. Trixie was either going to fix this longest night festival or completely ruin it for every pony, and at the moment, she was finding it hard to care which happened, even with the two hopeful participants in front of her. We'll just have to risk that. She didn't look down at Dinky. So, I need this letter to be sent as fast as possible, okay? Okay! The filly exclaimed, taking it in her mouth. Apparently, she wasn't trusting her telekinesis at the moment, despite Trixie's reassurances. And scampered off through the door, out of sight. Leroy Winkins is doing the express today, Dizzy Doo explained as she watched her daughter go with one eye. You'll be in Cloudstone in no time! She then turned to Trixie again. I hope you know what you're doing. Of course I do, Trixie lied. Sort of. As Dinky Doo got back on top of the box that allowed her to be at the desk. She looked to the filly, and found herself unable to resist doing something memorable. Like Luna, she loved fools. The little unicorn reached over and rubbed the filly on the head, nearly knocking off her hat and tossing her mane. And thank you, Dinky Doo. Hey! Stop that! Dinky objected, though she giggled too. Okay, Trixie relented. It's just that there's something caught in your hair, under your hat. Dinky blinked a few times, and then took off her hat, and checked her head, and found a silver bit falling out. She, impressively with her aids, caught it with telekinesis, eyes wide as she looked at Trixie, to her hat, which she hadn't noticed leaving her head at any point. How did you do that? The young unicorn demanded. Magic! Trixie responded. But your horn wasn't glowing. That's why it was magic. Trixie responded knowingly, turning around and trotting from the post office in a slightly better mood than when she had entered. Seeing the sun's descent across the sky, however, toward the horizon, turned her thoughts dark again. It served as a potent reminder of how little time remained before the night festival began tomorrow, and how Luna had exiled Trixie to Ponyville, though not before setting her up with a no-win scenario. Regardless of whether the result of the day was a saved or ruined festival, though, Trixie still had work to do. Grunting, she set off for her residency. So, Lulamoon, Lyra began. Trixie's glare did a name. It could have frozen the sun from its coldness. We're back to wanting Trixie, then? The unicorn said, Back! Last night, you insisted I call you Lulamoon. You might as well have been slightly very drunk. She paused a moment as she considered. About half of everything you said was in Prince, too, I think. Trixie stared for a few moments, before letting out a groan. No, it wasn't! She objected hopefully. It was, Lyra responded, nodding sadly. Also fell back into what I could only guess is a New Orleans accent. And you called me and Bonbon cute. Bonbon, my mare friend. I feel threatened, but, again, drunk. And you're not her type anyway. Plus, you thought every pony was cute at the time, even yourself. She leaned forward. But in purple, you're stunning, apparently. Never again! Trixie swore as he regarded her purple studded cake. Don't make promises you can't keep. Trixie objected. The two were sitting in Trixie's office, Trixie behind her desk. She had, in fact, poured herself a glass of something amber-colored to see if it would steady her nerves, or at least brighten her mood. But after Lyra's revelations, she was thinking water would do just fine. The blue unicorn began pouring her drink back into its bottle as she eyed her mint-green counterpart. Anyway, Lyra, first, I want to thank you for showing me around most of Ponyville, and leaving me a capable host before dissing me. Which I'm not mad about, I swear. No problem. Which brings me right to why I just paid some random pony 30 bits to get you here. I need your help. Lyra grimaced slightly. Shirley warned me about that. Said you were wandering around town today, basically on the warpath, conning Carrot Top into opening a stall on the longest night, making Rarity freak out about her decorations, and ordering weather for hire ponies, and using up just about your monthly stipend on them. Lyra blinked a few times. Where are you going to eat anyway, for the next month? Trixie shrugged. I don't know. I'll think of something. But that's not important right now. What's important is that Fluttershy is refusing to do the music, and you're a musician. Lyra's eyes widened a little as he realized what Trixie was going to ask. No, she intoned. Is that a no, I'm not going to do it, or no way, I can't believe it? Trixie asked with a smile on her face, sure of the answer. No, I'm not going to do it. Lyra responded evenly. Trixie's smile dropped. That was not the answer she had been expecting. What? She asked. The festival is tomorrow night. I need more time to prepare. A set list at least. Just play the anthem. For the raising of the moon, sure, but what about the rest of the night? Besides, I'm spending the night with Bon Bon. Lyra met Trixie's hard stare without effort. The two unicorns were silent for some time, before Trixie whickered in annoyance, trotting around from behind her desk, and horn glowing as she took a letter from her cape's pocket. The letter from the former Baron Duke Blueblood, which she subbed in front of the mint green unicorn. This is where I am, Lyra, Trixie intoned after giving a few moments to read. I have one chance, one, of maybe getting back in Luna's good graces, and that's saving everything for going straight into the sun. Lyra shook her mane. If that's true, she asked, then why does it seem like you're trying to ruin everything? You're going to start a fight between the Appleclad and poor Carrot Top. Not just her, Trixie objected, sliding the letter back into her cape pocket. I've actually arranged for a few other stalls too, spent most of the afternoon, but there won't be a fight because they're not selling on festival grounds. That's semantics and you know it. Think the apples will care? Of course they'll care, but they can't do anything about it. It'll give Luna more to eat than just apples. It'll leave Rarity in a most of a wreck, Lyra asked. She's still at Town Hall, you know. She'll probably be working her host until right before the festivals begin. And it looked great, and you know it. But then out the decorations will probably end up looking like they were done by a school filly. The weather for hire ponies? You'll be lucky if the weather patrol doesn't break in and kill you in your sleep. Trixie rolled her eyes. Raindrops herself said that she couldn't promise anything. If that storm over Evergreen is as bad as she said it was going to be, can I be blamed for wanting to hedge my bets? Lyra sighed, conceding the point. It's going to end poorly, that's all, she promised. And you want to add me to all this? Trixie shrugged. Know of any other musicians living here in Ponyville? Ones that are good enough to play for the princess herself? The unicorn took a step forward. She was playing her entire hoof here, faster than she normally would. But that's what it took. If you do, for the love of stars, tell me now. Otherwise, I've heard you play that harp. Liar! Lyra interrupted, with the same kind of force that Trixie put behind her demands about her name. Liar. Sorry, that liar of yours. And you're good. You just graduated from the magic school, so I'm guessing you know a lot of spells to enhance your playing. Enhancing how much that must look on a music resume. Music resume? Lyra asked, one brow raised. You have no idea how being a musician works, do you? I know that ponies with more consistent jobs would never pass up an opportunity like this. Lyra's brow arched higher. More consistent jobs? She echoed. You don't think very much of me, do you? Trixie blinked a few times. No. Wait, yes, no, whatever. I think you're just fine. Well, it's just that you'll be totally depending on the goodwill of ponies for income. Goodwill here being synonymous with charity, Lyra growled. No! Trixie objected. stomping a hoof on the wooden floor. Look, the point is, you're just out of the magic school on a music scholarship, and your first job would be praying for Princess Luna. Lyra's glare didn't drop for several moments, but eventually she did look away, tapping her hoof and chin in thought. Trixie was silent, so she shuffled from hoof to hoof anticipation. At length, Lyra looked back to her, the national anthem only. See a coincidence? And only for raising the moon. Trixie blinked. What about midnight, or the drawing down of the... Lyra stood up and turned for the door. See you tomorrow night, Trixie. Wait! Trixie objected, running forward in front of Lyra. Alright, fine. Just the moon. And just stringing up the stars. They're part and parcel. You can't do one without the other. It'll be all of 5 minutes. Lyra waited a moment before nodding her head once. Deal, she agreed, and watched Trixie let out a sigh of relief. After a moment, Lyra leaned in, but only because this really is a once-in-a-lifetime gig. I don't like you basically calling me a jobless bum. She didn't wait for Trixie to apologize before pushing past the unicorn and heading for the residency door. Trixie let her go. Had Lyra waited around, Trixie was certain she would have apologized, or said the words anyway. Her heart would hardly be behind it, as after all, she did end up what she wanted. Instead, Trixie trotted back to her desk, running over a mental list. Catering? Saved. At least to her own satisfaction. She had just enough bits left for a decent meal tomorrow. Music? Saved. For the most important part, anyway. Weather? Still iffy, but at least the matter was now in hoof. And volatile. Raindrops seemed far too professional to do anything more than complain about the weather for higher ponies. Decorations? Well, admittedly, Trixie had possibly ruined them. But if that was the case, it was so worth it to get back to Rarity for the dress and her shallow behavior. Speaking of getting back, Trixie had one particular pony she needed to lash out at. Trixie was certain that come tomorrow, Luna would see that Trixie was capable of bringing a festival back from the brink of disaster. She was more than ready to handle the more demanding possibilities of the night court and finally put both her sociological studies and her magical knowledge to practical use. And so, the final step then was to show Trixie how Trixie would waste that talent. And after all the long years of teaching that the Shepherd of the Moon had invested her, if the princess really did attempt to simply dump Trixie in Ponyville like so much trash, you'll be sorry!